Hello, everyone. I'm George Taylor from ImagiNERDing, and on this episode, I've got an often requested book review designing Disney's theme parks, the architecture of Reassurance. Stick around. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get more videos about theme parks, theme park history, theme park books, and so much more. This is a 1997 book that I've had in my collection, well, since 1997. You know, I've got a huge Disney book collection, and this is one that I read when it came out and haven't really touched it since then. As I mentioned, Designing Disney's Theme Parks, The Architecture of Reassurance, edited by Karal and Marling. And her name gets bandied about because she has done several museum quality displays and things like that in relation to the Disney theme parks. But let's take a look at this book. So, table of contents. This book is basically made up of a handful of chapters that look at Disney's architecture and society as a whole. And there are a few things that we want to look at with the different titles themselves. We've got a great foreword from the curator of the Canadian Center for Architecture. But then we have 7 different chapters covering different parts of Disney. The Artist as Imagineer by Marty Sklar. Expository Expositions, Preparing for the Theme Parks by Neil Harris, which is sort of a history of how we got to where we are. The bulk of the book, almost 150 pages, is Imagineering the Disney theme parks by the editor, Karal Ann Marling. Then we follow up with Making Imagination Safe in the 1950s, Disneyland and the Fantasy Art and Architecture by Erica Doss. Disneyland, Its Place in World Culture by Yi Fu Tuan with Stephen D. Hochschler. And 40 years of overstatement, criticism in the Disney theme parks. And then finally, an interview with Frank Gehry, well-known architect. So what I had forgotten about this book was the amount of concept artwork that was here. It really, really blew my mind. And we'll skip through some of these pages that's almost all text and look at some of the actual photos in depth. And I'll talk about the book. So the very first section, Expository Exposition, is one I think everybody should read and pay attention to because it's sort of at the heart of what I do here at ImagiNERDing is how did we get to these amazing world-class theme parks? How did we do that? And in this one, the author takes us on a look at all the different early versions of parks and the world's expositions and how we got to Disney World, Universal, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, all these major, major parks. And again, what I love about this book is the concept art, the early photographs. Some of these were quite eye-opening at the beginning. I mean, for instance, here's a photo of a table at the Contemporary Hotel. Where else are you going to see that? So once we jump into Karal's larger scope, like I said, over 150 pages, she takes a really detailed look at the parks as a whole. She does cover a lot of the history of Disneyland, the Disney studios, how Walt turned an animation studio into a global theme park, extravaganza, basically. And, this was published in 1997 when Disney publishing about Disney parks still wasn't like it was today. This was at the forefront. And again, based on several museum pieces that she had done. The photographs in this are astounding, wonderful. We get a full history of where this came from, including some of Walt's early ideas for Disneyland and what he wanted to do for Walt's Disneylandia and other pieces, different maps, an inside view of what a dark ride's going to look like, pictures of models. And yeah, this is crazy. This video could take us forever. And I know I'm going through this fairly quickly, but there's a lot that's covered here. Karal really takes us on a journey into how this idea of a theme park was developed. So although Disneyland isn't the first theme park, that's where they came up with the connotation of the word theme park. And she goes in depth about the architecture of Reassurance, which you always get confused with the John Hench title. So here's an interesting look at the Euro Disney Fantasyland castle model over the Disneyland for the size and scope. Of course, this was a preview. Didn't actually go with this castle. Anyway, they look at the park icons, what were the histories of them, and it is completely an eye-opening work, and I love it. Absolutely positively love it. I'd forgotten how much I liked this book till I had somebody on YouTube consistently asking me to review it, which I'm glad they did. Just alone, the artwork, concept artwork, is overwhelming. I mean, it's even as modern as the Indiana Jones rides. Remember, 1997, you didn't have a blog on every street corner or a vlogger showing you every new cupcake. This is when there wasn't a lot of actual published scholarly work. And I had forgotten about this book. This one rings... wow, let me start over. This one stands up there to me with... Well, here's how the concept for Toontown at Disneyland. Anyway, this book stands up there with Vinyl Leaves as far as a history of the parks, a history of the evolution of design. Gosh, these photographs are amazing. Vinyl Leaves is my other favorite book because it basically takes you ride by ride or attraction by attraction at Disney World and queue by queue and gives you a complete walkthrough. So I think that's another book to check out. Vinyl Leaves by Stephen Fellman. But again, this covers everything. So you get into parts about the early planning for Walt Disney World and Epcot. Architect Marvin Davis. There's Marty Sklar walking around where the castle's going to be. Some of these photos you've seen before. Some of them you have never seen or haven't seen in a while. And it's just a great all-in-one place to come back and get a history of how the theme parks are designed and what they do. I mean, look at this. This was one of the original ideas for Alien Encounter at Disneyland, not even at the Magic Kingdom. I mean, the artwork here is superb. So as I mentioned, there are a few other articles that rounded out Making Imagination Safe. So it talks about fantasy art and architecture, mini essays which help pull the whole book together as a whole. Really enjoy them. Disneyland, its place in world culture, fantastic. Talks about early parks. I mean, going all the way back to the Sun King over in France. Anyway, it's a great title. Highly recommend it. Get to the end. There really isn't... there's a small bibliography. They do list some of their sources, which as a librarian, I always appreciate that, and I'm glad to see it. And, well, oh, that's right. I forgot about this. This was fascinating to me when I first ran across this book. There's a chronology compiled by Andrew Lansbury. I'm not familiar with him. I'm going to have to look him up now. But basically, here are all the key dates. You know, from Walt's birthday all the way through the decades, you know, when he visited the Chicago, the train fair with Ward Kimball in the 40s, to the development of all the different parks, the opening of Tokyo Disneyland, and ends on, right here, spring 1998, a fourth theme park slated to open at Walt Disney World, Disney's Animal Kingdom. And a few of the ideas of the photos. So, love this book. Highly recommend it. I hope you can find it on the secondhand market. It is obviously out of print. I think I got this from my mom and dad for a Christmas present. They bought it at Borders when it was new, and I left it on there. So, again, Designing Disney's Theme Parks, edited by Karal and Marling. Handful of essays about how theme parks, well, Disney's theme parks were designed, which relates to the rest of the theme parks in the world. Wonderful book. Parts of it will be a little too much for the lay reader, but I think owning this and seeing the imagery alone is well worth it. So tell me, do you have a copy of this book in your library? What do you think about Designing Disney's Theme Parks, edited by Karal and Marling? Do you recommend it? Are you looking for this one? Leave me a comment and let me know. I would love to hear from you. I'm George Taylor from ImagiNERDing, and I hope to see you in the parks.